You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is April 24th, 2023, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And we've got to apologize right off the start. We were supposed to have an interview with Chase Oliver, but he had some transportation issues that have delayed this. So we'll have him on probably sometime in May. So look forward to that. And Chase Oliver, of course, is one of the candidates. He is running for the 2024 Libertarian nomination for U.S. president. So we're trying to get all of those guys who've announced on the show so that you can hear about them before it's time to vote on them so you can get to know them. But anyways, so we're kind of cobbling together a show on some just topical issues today. And we do have a special guest in our studio as well today. Our invisible hand, James Just, is joining us from behind the scenes, and he is in our upper left-hand corner. And he is also the Sacramento County chair of the Libertarian Party. So he wears
and I want my apology for getting me up at this early every Monday morning. That's what I want my apology for.
The invisible hand is much, much friendlier when there's no audio. Anyways, thanks. Well, thanks for joining us this morning, James. And in our upper right-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite. Last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. My name is James McPhee, and I'll be your host. So anyways, let's jump into the issues. So there's a few big sort of bombshells that dropped last week, and one of them deals, of course, with was the election of 2020 stolen, and there's a lot of stuff that's coming out that's really starting to cement the theory behind that. And so, James, maybe you could bring up the visual on this one. So in Congress, this is one of the things where elections have consequences, and so by the Republicans winning the House, they're finally able to start digging in on some of this deep state stuff. And it turns out that when the if you recall, as the election was going on, a letter came out from all of the intelligence heads, or at least a whole bunch of them anyways. There was like 50 of them.
51.
And I guess
51 of them.
51. Yeah, and they had people, I believe, like Clapper, who is also the guy that Snowden nailed for lying to the public. So, these guys are a bunch of gems as far as honesty goes, right? But anyways, they all piled into this letter to say that the Hunter Biden laptop they thought was Russian disinformation. And so that essentially gave Biden cover during the debates to say, hey, I got a letter here with all these top intelligence people who are saying that this isn't real. Okay, well, now at this point, we know the laptop was real. Everybody has come out and said the laptop is real. So we know the Bidens know that the laptop was real. And so that means, but what's really the bombshell was that in the hearings that they were running in Congress, they interviewed this guy, Mike Morrell, and he was a former CIA director.
He was the acting director. He was never confirmed as such. He was the acting director. Okay. Yes.
He was the acting director. And who do you think called him up or communicated with him rather before to try and get this letter rounded up of all these guys? It was Blinken, the guy who is Biden's Secretary of State. So Biden said that the guy who is essentially, one of the leaders of the Biden campaign is contacting these guys to say, hey, we need you to get a letter together that says from all these big intelligence people to say that, hey, this is Russian disinformation, when he knows that the Biden camp knows that this is, disinformation that they're making to feed the public. Now, remember, Biden was the guy who was trying to put in essentially a ministry of truth in Homeland Security. It was some board of disinformation they were calling it.
The Disinformation Governance Board is what it was called.
Yeah, and it was just this bizarre person they wanted to put in there who had like these show tunes they were doing about how they wanted to censor disinformation, I guess, or whatever. It was just beyond the pale. But the point is, though, that this is Biden then clearly trying to feed the public disinformation before the election and using our intelligence apparatus to essentially back his story. So if that's not stolen election, what is? Anyways, I'll throw this to you guys.
This thing stinks to high heavens, and it stinks in a very, very bad way. And this to me is a serious threat to our democracy. At the point in time of the of the election, the FBI already had possession of that laptop. Okay, so the FBI at minimum knew that was not Russian disinformation at the time. Joe Biden would have known that laptop was his son's laptop because he have access to his son. So at the point in time that this letter was developed, everybody knew it was not Russian disinformation. Everybody knew. Yeah. The Biden campaign knew, the FBI knew, and you could sure like hell bet the CIA knew that this was not Russian disinformation. All of these guys who signed that letter had high security clearance, so they could have accessed the information to find out if it was or was not. Okay, so this was a clear lie from the very beginning. They knew it was not. All of them who signed that letter had the security clearance to check to see if this might have been some Russian disinformation or not. They didn't do that. They did none of that, but they signed that letter to tell us that, oh, it was Russian disinformation, just to protect the Biden campaign and to protect the possibility of Biden winning the 2020 election. And this thing stinks. This is a threat to our democracy. How else could you categorize this when you're seeing people in government? Now, the intelligence community is supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be neutral. They're not supposed to be taking sides. But this smells of the deep state, that there's a bunch of folks working within the government and within the intelligence community and in law enforcement trying to tip the scales to help the Democrats. This is scary stuff here. This is truly scary. The Biden campaign orchestrated this disinformation to help their own campaign. And Joe Biden used it in one of the presidential debates. God help us. We're in trouble here and we're not even realizing it. This is what is scary.
Well, we know that they end up being what they complain about, right? If they complain about misinformation, you know they're spreading misinformation. If they're complaining about racism, you know their thought process is race-based. If they're complaining about sexism, you know that they categorize people based upon the simplistic categories. We just know that this is what happens now, right? It's gone way beyond hypocrisy. We try to avoid the hypocrisy word here because it's impossible, but this is beyond hypocrisy. It's just is. This is like a deliberate attempt to obfuscate the truth by pretending other people are doing what you are doing, right? There's a word for that, and I'm escaping it at the moment because it's
you're having a Biden moment. But I have a lot of them too.
Yeah. But James, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That about in terms of how you categorize this thing. But the problem is, though, this is undermining our institutions. That's what it's doing, because we have intelligence officers, some of them former intelligence officers. As a matter of fact, some of them were head of the CIA. Okay, I think Brennan and Copper was also head of the national security, national intelligence, whatever. But all of these guys were high-ranking people within government. And these people are doing things to undermine our democratic values. The institution of democracy, which is so cherished in our great land here, is being undermined for the benefit of Joe Biden and the Democrats.
But this is nothing different. The CIA, FBI, they've always done this. This is kind of their history. You say they undermined these agencies. These agencies have always been undermined. There's nothing new under the sun. You can go back and look in time and time again, and you have similar things. where these agencies act in the benefit of a particular political group. At the moment, it's maybe Democrats, but what was it in the 60s, in the 50s, right? They were operating for the Republicans. So what are you
No,
going to do?
well, that part, that part is true, and I'm not trying to say that that we should not be just as alarmed when during the Watergate scandal, when Richard Nixon was being investigated and end up resigning. They were using the FBI and the IRS to weaponize those two agencies to go after their political opponents, which is I mean is horrendous, no matter how you look at it.
Yes. So the solution may be to defang these agencies.
Mm-hmm.
That defanging, I don't know how we're going to do that, because we need the CIA. I think personally, we do need them at some level, and we need the FBI at some level. But we don't need them to be doing the kind of bullshit. Pardon me. We don't need them to be doing the kind of stuff they're doing. We don't, and we don't need some of their people who are either working there or who are retired but still maintain their security clearances to be making statements that help one political party or the other. Truthfully, well, in this case, it's the Democrats. But we don't need them to be engaging in this sort of activity. I don't know if this is criminal, okay? And I hope it is, because somebody should be prosecuted for this. Because I think this letter and the whole narrative of this is Russian disinformation, I think this swayed the election in Joe Biden's favor. To me, that should be criminal at some level. There must be.
I wonder if we
something
can consider it as a campaign contribution and get him on campaign finance violations.
Yeah, I've heard some people talking about that possibility, because it is like a something in kind, I guess.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
a contribution in kind. That's true. Yes,
yeah, and Blinken did not know. I guess he hadn't been given Secretary of State yet. So I mean, he essentially delivered this for Biden, and then he gets to be Secretary of State after Biden is made president. So.
It could be a pro quo, they call it, or
quid
something.
pro quo. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But one thing that does strike me is, James, I completely agree with you that these agencies have been doing this kind of stuff all along. I think the difference is that we're just much more aware of it now. It's much more in your face since COVID. Like I think things have been bad for the last couple decades, but man, did COVID just rip the bandage or the mask or whatever you want to call it right off, and just showed us how much government is just lying in your face to you, and just to get you to do whatever they want you to do. So this is
it's a good thing. Actually, in a strange way, it's a good thing, because now we actually can see without any filters how absolutely corrupt our government is at all levels.
And that is such a good point. Seeing the corruption, okay. The question is, what do we do about it? Because this is a direct threat to our liberties and our freedoms. It really is. It's a direct threat to it. Because what are they planning for us for 2024? Okay, Biden is not president after they did what they did in 2020. He's not president. What are they planning for 2024? I don't think they're gonna stop. They're going to do everything to make sure Biden is reelected, even though he's half dead cognitively. I think they're going to be doing everything. So what are they planning? I don't know. This is truly undermining our liberties and our freedoms.
Well, I think the one thing this hammers home is that large government with lots of concentrated power is probably ultimately more dangerous than any external enemy. I think that's what this really shows. I mean, we saw this with the NSA. I mean, look at this. I mean, Clapper was shown by Edward Snowden to be lying to the public about spying on them.
Yes.
And which one of them has had grief for it? It's Snowden. Snowden has been, he's been in exile, having to live in Russia, and having to flee for his life, and then you got Julian Assange, which is just reporting on government corruption and government secrets, that where the government is lying to us about things, and all of a sudden, he's the one who's in jail and not the people who. I mean, this is, You know, it's
people who deliberately
yeah.
violate the constitutional rights of all Americans are running free, while the people who expose it are the ones who are in hiding or in
Yes.
jail.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's
That's a
all
good point.
ass backwards.
Yes,
And
that's a good point.
Yeah.
But that speaks to the phenomena of the deep state at work, though. That's what it speaks to. That it tells you that these people, that the federal government have become such a threat to our freedom, our liberties, that they seem to do nothing other than protect itself from us.
which
And
means
we
don't
had,
believe when these people tell you about no one's above the law, they don't mean it.
yeah.
Yeah,
They
you're
mean,
not above the law. They
I mean,
are.
I'm not above the law, and you're not above the law, and Jason's not above the law. You're right. You're absolutely right. But they are above the law because it looks like they never get prosecuted for any of the nonsense they do.
No, and when they do, what happens is the taxpayers write a check.
Yes, right. Exactly. There you go.
Well, the bottom line is keep government small, simple, and transparent. That's the best recipe for keeping our liberties. But I tell you, I mean, the insanity goes beyond just this. It just goes into government doing all kinds of wacko stuff. And one of the most recent things we also heard last week was that Biden has this new plan for how he wants to get more people into homes. He essentially wants to turn the whole mortgage credit rating system on its head and say that, well, if you are a good risk, you need to pay more for the people who are bad risks. So, I mean, so this isn't something where they specifically said, hey, we're going to do this directly on melanin, which is what Biden almost always leads with. For some reason, Biden has this love affair with dark skin where, he's going to, give you a Valentine every week, I guess. But, depending upon your melanin levels. And but anyways, this crazy thing just turns. It's like a war against the price signal almost, because the whole point of a credit rating is to tell lenders what your risk is to them of paying them back, and it's to say, look, we could lump everybody together, but we know that wouldn't be fair because some people are better risks than other people, and so we should, we know that risk costs us. So, if we can determine who the bigger risks are, then we can appropriately apply the price, rather. And he wants to turn that on its head. I believe it's at about a 1.75% additional cost to the the person with a good credit rating over 680. So I think they were talking about for an average loan that might be around $40 extra per payment, so that he can lower the payments for people who are sub 680 on their credit rating. Anyways, what do you guys think about this? This just seems absolutely nuts.
Well, we've seen this one before, right? You make it easier to buy housing for poor people or people who have lower incomes to get housing without increasing the housing supply. All you end up doing is making housing more expensive for everybody. You actually make it worse. So even if it was going to theoretically work, unless you actually get out of the way and allow housing to be built at proper scale, you're just going to make it worse. Just like they made education worse, just like they make healthcare worse. All these things make things worse because, as Jason, they just ruin the price signals. And now what? So now they're not building enough housing. So you're going to solve that by making loans easier for poor people. It doesn't make any sense.
And it's not purely just poor people. It's people who are bad risks. So, I mean, like if you don't pay your bills on time, you're the type of person who's going to have a lower rating. Now, it's possible that may correlate with being poor, but it's not necessarily just because you have less money. It's because, you're not doing whatever it takes to generate a credit rating. So.
Yeah, well, I spent 20 years outside the credit system, and I actually just paid off my car that I actually bought to buy back into the credit system. You have to buy back your way back in, right? That's what you do when you spend 20 years outside. You deliberately go unbanked. You don't have a credit card. You don't do any of that stuff. You have to buy yourself back in, and it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I mean, all the points you guys making are valid, okay? But the reason that Biden is doing all of this thing, Jason, you talk about this love affair that Biden has with people with dark skin or with whatever. Biden don't have a love affair with people with dark skin. He
He's
has a
got
lot
his
of
eyes
fear.
on you, Leon. He's
Yes,
giving you a wink.
yes. He has a love affair with the votes,
There you go.
of the people with dark skin. Okay, let's just get that clear. Okay, you don't care that people who have melatonin like me. He doesn't, believe me. Anyway, even though he claims to. Anyway, but all of this is being done in the name of one of the most poisonous thing that is going on in American society today, which is this diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what is being done in the name of. And this thing is nothing but finding new ways to divide people. So this man wants to take the people who have spent their lives building credit by paying the bills on time, by making wise decisions. Not all of them are going to be wise, but they try to make wise decisions as best you can. These people are not going to be penalized for their success. And this is what this diversity, equity, and inclusion always does. They look for ways to punish success. So what do you think is going to happen in the end? You're going to divide people. And you are right. There's a disproportionate amount of people who blacks, Hispanics, who are the lower socioeconomic part of our society, and of course, the non-whites and whites make up the people who are north of 680 on their credit rating. So what do you think is going to happen when people object to this? Okay, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to be the Democrats again. There's their issue. Oh, look at what's going on. Racism. They don't like, they don't want to see people better themselves. People at the low end of the scale, mostly black and brown, who are disproportionately black and brown. They don't want to see these people better themselves. Obviously, it's racism. And this is where it's going. This is one step they take, one step at a time, with this diversity, equity, and inclusion, this poison, and they're going to be calling this racism when we object to it. I don't know what they're going to call me. They're probably going to call me an Uncle Tom or something. When we object to it, they're going to call it racism. I could guarantee it. It's going to happen. And this is the poison that is ongoing in our society.
Yep. Yeah, it just seems like it's one thing after another, divide, and in the end, I mean, that's kind of what socialism has to do, right? Because you have to have money to take from one person to give to another, because the government doesn't generate any of this stuff itself.
Exactly.
So there's got to be some way that you can say these are the people we're going to take from, and these are the people we're supposedly going to give to. Although it doesn't always work out that way. So, but there's a related story from California too, and it seems like these bad ideas tend to come from California and then work their way across the nation, whether it be our, that whole AB5 that was against the gig workers or whatever. So it seems like maybe this time, I guess Biden with the mortgages jumped ahead of California. I don't know, but at least on electricity, sounds like they're going to start essentially pricing by how much you make now. So it's not going to be by how much you use. It's like when you go to the McDonald's and if you want to buy a Big Mac, they don't say, okay, how much do you make? And then they say how much they're going to charge you for each Big Mac. Instead, now they're going to say, well, with electricity, how much do you make? And that's kind of how much we're going to charge you. So they want to go to flat rate pricing. That's part of it, because they're trying to get away from these energy spikes where, everybody's using energy during the summer or something, and then boom, everybody's paying a lot of money because scarcity, and so they have to have some way to modulate it. But in one of the solutions they're trying to do is they say, okay, well, let's have this kind of buffet style pricing where we'll charge you one rate all year long. But then they said, well, of course, we're Democrats, so it has to be progressive. So if you make more, we're going to charge you more. And if you make less, we're going to charge you less. So one of the proposals I heard was something like if you make more than 185,000, it's 85 per month. But I've heard some different rates, some of them going as high as $120 something a month year round. But the craziest thing about this, right? This is California, where we're talking about being against, trying to fight climate change. So you actually want the price signals to tell people, hey, if you make more than 85,000, it's 85 per month. But if you make less, we're going to charge you more. And if you make less, we're going to charge you less. So one of the proposals I heard was something like if you make more than 185,000, it's 85 per month. But I've heard some different rates, some of them going as high as $120 something a month. But the craziest thing about this, right? This is California, where we're talking about being against, trying to fight climate change. So you actually want the price signals to tell people, hey, there's too much energy being used, so use less right now, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's the whole point of price signals, right?
Yes.
When you have a high demand during the summer, you want the price signal to say, hey, it's really expensive right now because everybody wants it. And if you all use it, we're going to have rolling blackouts. Well, if they flatten the price, then how, that's killing one of the tools to be able to moderate how people are addressing scarcity. Anyway, what do you guys think about it? It's just more craziness.
Well, again, it goes back to the same thing. This same equity nonsense. Okay, but I think the Democrats, the progressives in our society, they suffer from what I call a godlike syndrome. You see, you talk a lot, Jason, about these price signals that apparently they don't like. They don't like the outcomes that the marketplace will give us. So these progressives, people Gavin Newsom and company, they think they know better than the marketplace. They think they know better than the sum total of all of our voluntary transactions that we make in the marketplace. They know better. So they could impose this equity progressive kind of chart to say, well, Leon, if you're making X amount of money, you should pay one price. And James, if you making another amount of money, you could pay a different price. And on it goes, all in the name of this equity kind of thing. But what is going on here is this godlike syndrome that these people suffer with. It's a really bad thing, because no matter what you're doing with these people, you always see them trying to do these social engineering that will give some utopian outcome that they are sure is going to come if only we let it play out. But we know that's nonsense. We know that. But this godlike syndrome is so infecting their brain, they cannot get away from it. So we're always going to see this nonsense coming from them, whether it's the mortgage fees that we were just talking about, and you're talking about the price signals there too, or whether it's this electricity fee that you're talking about, and that one is also gonna have problems eventually. You always see the same thing. They'd have to destroy these market signals because their narrative of how society should be organized is not coming through, and the marketplace is interfering with that vision that they have. So they must destroy these market signals, and they must impose these social engineering things to make everything quote unquote better. But we know it's not going to happen. We know that. So here we go again.
Well, and let's think. The Democrats like to talk a lot about your data, right? But now you're going to have to submit your tax returns to your electric company so you can get your proper pricing.
Yeah.
How is this functionally going to work? And when this fails, what's going to happen? What's the next step? Is the statification, since we can't nationalize electricity in California, but we can statify. You can statalize. Statalize, is that a word? What's a word now? You can statalize the electricity in California because you've broken the market.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate long-term goal with these people, right? They want complete control of everything. And so this is their way to get it. It's the incrementalism. Some people call it the slippery slope. In politics, we call it incrementalism. They're going step by step by step. They know it's not going to work. They don't care if it works. That's not the point.
Right.
That's not the point.
Well, you brought up a funny point there too, as far as points go. The idea that you're going to have to show all this information to prove how much you make.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny apparently to vote, Democrats don't think you should have to show your ID, but apparently to get your electricity, you got to show your whole tax return. Isn't that kind of funny?
Oh, yes, that's a good one. That's a good one.
So, yeah, it's just insanity on stilts. But speaking of insanity, we're about that time of the show for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And this is where we try and talk about something silly that somebody in either government or media has said recently. And so there was a story that came out about a week or two ago where swimmer Riley Gaines had been invited to speak by a Turning Point USA club at San Francisco State University, I believe. And she was essentially assaulted by a group of protesters. I think I'm not sure if they were Antifa or some other group, but the point was they were coming to protest her because she is sort of leading the charge for women rights as far as competitive sports go, to not have to compete against people who were born male for the most part. And of course, she was the swimmer who had to go up against Leah Thompson, and this Leah Thompson was a person who had been born a man and decided to identify at some point as a woman after swimming competitively against men. So this is a person who swam against other college men and was not the leader of the pack, apparently. So nobody knew his name.
I was way down in the pack. I think it was like rank 500 and something, I think.
Yeah. But it's so far down that I don't even know what his male name was, so I can't even name him.
William or something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll leave it to you to dead name him. But as far as that goes, though, I mean, so this Leah Thompson then decided when they identified as a woman, this is not a person who actually went through the surgical transition or anything. This is a person who is going in that locker room, changing with all the women, and has not done any kind of surgery transition whatsoever. And they're swimming against the women, and in some cases, they're beating the women by huge margins. So apparently, Riley Gaines was speaking on this, and she was attacked. They came in, they shut the lights off during the talk, as they do in all these things, trying to shut down conservative-leaning speakers. And there is video. We don't have it for you here right now, but you can go find it online. But where she is being escorted by security through a hallway with people yelling and screaming at her, and they had to put her in a small closet room, I believe it was, while she had to wait for several hours for the protesters to go away. I mean, that's essentially how much control the protesters had over the situation. And so anyways, this came up on Bill Maher's show, and they were talking about it, Piers Morgan and California Representative Katie Porter. And so Katie Porter said at this event, when Riley Gaines was talking out about this, how she was talking about potentially going after the school for claiming this was just a peaceful protest when she had actually been physically assaulted, is what she claims. Katie Porter, California representative, said that, Riley Gaines is just doing this for clicks. Okay. And so Riley Gaines then came back with a tweet where she said, hey, at Katie Porter, I'm not speaking up for myself. I'm done playing sports. I'm not fighting for me. I'm actually supposed to be in dental school this year, but I've changed my life plans because I see what's at stake if somebody doesn't fight for the present and the next generation. And of course, like I said, she's been sort of victimized in all of this competitiveness stuff. Like I said, Leah Thompson has, taken a lot of the titles as she's been swimming. And and even one case where Riley Gaines managed to tie her, they didn't even hand the trophy to Riley Gaines. They told her they'd send it to her in the mail while they gave it to Leah Thompson so she could take the stand. So it's just, craziness on stilts. But anyways, what do you guys think about this? Nonsense of Katie Porter and some of these others.
First of all, let's just acknowledge that gender dysphoria is a real psychological disorder. Okay, let's just acknowledge that. Okay, that needs psychological intervention to get straightened out. But what is going on right now with some of these people and their damn nonsense is just unbelievable. Okay. And look at this woman who's supposed to be a congresswoman, one of our elected representatives. And she's going to look at Riley Gaines, who have actually been in the field, shall we say, who have actually had to compete against a biological male. In one case, Leah Thomas, that's her new name, I guess. Leah Thomas won a race in competitive sports, won a race by 50 seconds. Now you think about that for a second, okay? This was somebody who could not compete as a man, obviously could not compete as a man, but suddenly has rose to fame because they could compete as a woman and become number one. there's something wrong with this. Something really, really wrong. We should do a show on this thing. There's something wrong. Biological males are faster, stronger, and taller. This is a fact. This is an objective truth. But somehow, people in our society on the left can't acknowledge that. This is horrendous. And they are trying to wipe out women's sports and probably wipe out women in general, because we have a Supreme Court justice who can't define what a woman is.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what we were told when she was going through her confirmation hearings.
And Leon, also women who are winning beauty contests and Women of the Year awards who also are not biological women. So,
yes. And look at this big commercial, this big advertising contract was given to Dylan, what her name? Dylan somebody.
Dylan Mulvaney.
Okay, Dylan Mulvaney. And she, I guess, has been given this big advertising contract. For what purpose? The only thing that she has going for her is the fact that she's now a woman. After she was born a biological male. What is happening here? They're just trying to erase the concept of woman that have been with us for the last 3,000 years, or since all of human history. And here we go. Another diversity, equity, inclusion issue that the left will not acknowledge, but they only want us to think about, we have to feel sorry for those victims of people who are suffering the gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is real. The treatment of it is what's at stake here, is what is the damn nonsense in all of this.
Well, I only have two quick things to point out. One is, if you're a left-wing protester, you are above the law, because we've seen that time and time and time again. So, you just are. And
yes.
What's the name? Megan Rapinoe, the other day, she said she was replying to this Gaines lady. I forget her name already.
Riley Gaines.
She's replying, says, it's just women's sports. It's not that important. Well, if it's not that important, then why is it important to you? Right? Why is it important? If it's just women's sports and it's not important, then why is it important? You can't have it both ways. You can't tell it's important enough for these transgender people that they have to get an opportunity and take away opportunities for other women, and then tell these women that it's just women's sports. It's not important. You can't have it both ways.
Good point, James.
Not only that, too, Title IX, that was the whole point of Title IX, is to give women an opportunity to compete in a class where they could compete, right? I mean, because if they were just competing against men, then essentially there would be no women's sports, right? I mean, there'd be so few opportunities that, it would be ridiculous, right? So this is the whole point of why they did Title IX. But, Leon, there's another point I would push back just a little bit. I would be completely okay with whatever the public wanted to do, as long as it was market derived, right? If let's say, for instance, there's a sport and people decide that trans, athletes are a great thing to watch or whatever, then I'm fine with that. The problem is it's government that's pushing his stuff down, right? It's literally setting these definitions and forcing these categories. And that's the real problem here, right? Because, and what we're seeing here is these women, they just want to compete, and they really don't have an option, because these schools are highly regulated and influenced by the government, and they're being told they have to do this stuff. So,
well,
we're not talking rec league level stuff, right? We're not talking stuff at rec league level. We're talking competitive level sports. We're not talking people who want to go out and play co-ed softball. We don't care. No one cares, right? No one's trying to win. They're just out having some fun. We're talking actual competitive level sports.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, I want to respond to your comment just a little bit, okay? I think in our society and in our laws, I think we have settled on the fact that we should only discriminate when there's a rational basis. I think that is in law. There must be a rational basis. So, for instance, skin color is not a rational basis for discrimination. It is not. Or your ethnicity is not a rational basis. But when you have differences, biological differences, like between men and women, that becomes a rational basis for discrimination. So, for instance, you can have separate bathrooms, which is really discriminatory when you really think about it. But there's a rational basis for it. So, biological men should go into the men bathroom, biological females should go into the female bathrooms. So, this transgender whole idea about Leah Thomas could walk into a woman's bathroom and all of his equipment is still intact is essentially a violation of one of the principles of law here in the United States, which said we can discriminate when there's a rational basis for the discrimination.
Well, I'd push back on the bathroom thing just a little bit. And one is, I can completely agree with you on the government bathrooms. If it's a government-run bathroom, you got to have some set of rules that everybody can agree on. But if it's private bathroom, then why not just let the market, like, for instance, if it was a McDonald's and if people were worried that they're going to send their kids in there and it's going to be a little girl and there's going to be a guy, essentially a man peeing next to her or whatever, then I can understand that, the market would sort of regulate that, right? I mean, maybe there'd be places where people are completely cool with that, but in places where they're not, they could also don't have to do that. And you just let the competition happen and see what shakes out. But no pun intended. but on the other hand, if it's government, then yes, this is everybody's paying into it, and we have to have some set of preordained rules that we're going to agree on. So
I'll take that as a valid point. That's a valid point.
Yeah. Well, unless James, unless you have anything further to throw on this fire.
No, we'll let the fire go out. We'll let the fire go out.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us again. We apologize for not having Chase Oliver here today, but we're hoping we'll have him sometime, maybe mid to late May, and we should also have our Screaming Eagle back soon too. He was out not a little under the weather today. So, anyways, thanks so much for joining us, and until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.